Good afternoon, folks, and thanks for joining us. Welcome to the MMA Sucka podcast. My name is Tim Wheaton, joined as always by the editor-in-chief at MMA Sucka, Frazer Krohn. How you doing today, sir?
It's all good, Tim. It's all good. We're thankful to get our YouTube channel back. We had a little bit of a dicey couple of days last week where we completely lost the YouTube channel. But we are on Spotify, we are on Apple Podcasts. Usually gets uploaded either on the same day on the Monday evening or on the Tuesday. But we're back on YouTube. Plenty of visuals, plenty of sort of we asked the question on Twitter, what do you guys want to see from us? Analysis, news, Q&As and whatnot. And I think it came out just off the top of my head. I think it was predominantly analysis, and that's kind of what we do already. But we'll try and do a little bit more, maybe picture and video analysis going forwards. But yeah, pretty big, first pay-per-view for the UFC of the weekend. There wasn't really much else going on this weekend. We had a little bit of boxing in the UK, but aside from that, it was UFC 283, and I think on the face of it, it delivered.
It's hard when it's hyped up, right? Of like it's a title. There's two title fights. It's back in Brazil. We're on the main event, where it was first pay-per-view of the year. When you build up a bit of hype around the event like that, it was okay. I mean, the Brazilian audience wasn't happy, and I do understand that.
Yeah,
they walked out and stuff like that. I don't know. I think did they only get like 2 or 3 wins on the entire card in terms of Brazilian fans? Like,
well, I did. I looked down. Well, I watched the first couple of fights, and Bonfim was obviously the first fight, the first Brazilian fighter. Sorry, was one of 2 Brazilian fighters in the first 4 fights to get a win.
That was a great win too. That was a great win.
Yeah, some win it was. Terence McKinney dipped when he should have maybe dived when he should, and Bonfim looked really good in that one. And Terence McKinney isn't, he's not the upper echelons of the division, but he's no slouch.
Right.
He just looking down his record now, it's the second flying knee that he's been hit with in the UFC. Yes, it was on the Contender Series that he got knocked out with the flying knee from Sean Woodson, but then he knocked out Matt Favola in 7 seconds. Another first round finish of Zahim. Narrowly lost to Drew Dober, who, as we spoke about, was it last week or the week before, was one of the top guys at 155. And McKinney's he's no slouch, and for Bonfim to get it done, that's decisive. There's no questions. Yep. And it was nice to see there was respect between the 2 guys after that. And then
great highlight.
They go into another fight where the Brazilian guy loses to Cody Stamann, dominant by Stamann again. For me that wasn't 29-28, but that wasn't close for me at all.
No.
But then you go into Jayton Almeida, who I saw a thing on Twitter. Everyone was hyping up Khamzat. This guy's only taken one significant strikes in his first 3 fights. Let's look at Jayton Almeida, because he won on the Contender Series. He then took no significant strikes in his first fight, no significant strikes in his second fight, 1 significant strike in his third, and 1 significant strike in his fourth.
Yeah,
this guy has been hit significantly twice in 4 fights, and only 3, 6. He's been hit 9 times in 4 fights, of which 6 have been significant, and nobody's talking about him. This guy is the future.
Well, especially at that weight class as well. Like, if this was a bantamweight or lightweight, we would be saying, "Oh, great, another great fighter." But at light heavyweight, this is the future champ right here. I guarantee.
Exactly. I mean, he's competed at light heavyweight. He's obviously gone up for the last 2 or 3 at heavyweight.
Okay.
So he's a tweener. He can. Jamahal Hill. We'll go on to talk about his fight in a second. He's not. In my opinion, he's not the best light heavyweight in the world.
Yeah.
The belt might say otherwise, but he's not. So Jayton Almeida could just drop down to 205 and face him. Heavyweight, we spoke about it last week with when we had Melissa on the show.
Yeah.
Heavyweight is there's 5, 6 potential fights up at heavyweight that all make sense, but then it's an aging division. Cyril Gane's not young. John Jones isn't young. Stipe Miocic isn't young. Francis Ngannou isn't in the UFC anymore. You've got the second wave of the Jayton Almeidas, the Tom Aspinall, Sergey Pavlovich, Curtis Blades to a degree. I know he's not the youngest, but he's got a style that maybe he doesn't rely particularly on speed with the wrestling heavy style. But he's at a weight. Or rather, he can make a weight, or he can put on a weight that is going to be beneficial for him. And I think obviously he got the performance of the night. He almost took DC down with the post-fight interview. I thought it was a really good performance by Jayton Almeida, and that this was all before we got to the main card. I think it was a really good, and obviously Gregory Rodriguez getting just one punch, just one punch. It was one punch. I had to watch it back about 3 or 4 times because it was an exchange, and then it was just a straight, and it wasn't a straight to the side of the head that just sort of cut off his. It was a straight to the chin that just swung his jaw and knocked. It was crazy. It was
Gregory Rodriguez. Knockout. Oh, it really was. It was a great highlight. But yeah, Gregory Rodriguez has always been someone. The reason he's such an entertaining fighter is because he relies on his chin strength, and his chin strength has been very good. He takes shots and keeps marching forward. Well, couldn't take the shot. This is what happens,
Exactly, and you've got to take into account is Bruno Ferreira coming in on late night. I think he was supposed to be fighting Brad Tavares, Gregory Rodriguez. The guy, Bruno Ferreira, he's not 5'10" for a middleweight. He's small.
Yeah,
he is just 5'10" of just power and muscle by the looks of it. And it, I mean, ask Gregory Rodriguez, it works. It really works. He knocked Gregory Rodriguez out with a single shot, and it wasn't. He did follow up, but wasn't necessary. There wasn't any malicious sort of follow up. UFC debut, you knock someone down, you of course you follow up. But
yeah,
the guy's record now. I'm just going to try and pull it up now because I believe that he's just he's 10-0 with. He's 10-0 with 10 finishes, 7 of which have been knockout, 3 submissions. So the guy's well-rounded as well. He obviously got the chance on the Contender Series, big knockout in the first round. Gets a chance, short notice in the UFC against a guy like Gregory Rodriguez, who, as you say, his style is based on having a chin, essentially. We've all seen that cut. Was it Chidi that opened it up on him last time? Yeah. Chidi opened up the cut on him, and then Rodriguez went on to win the fight. We've all seen that, and he fought through that.
That was so.
I could see. I'm pretty sure I saw brain and skull.
Yeah,
this shouldn't happen in a sport. This is a sport. Let's not forget that this is a sport. This is on the same. This is in the same category as running. This is in the same category as darts. These are sports, and you can almost see a guy's brain. But it is what it is.
That I was gonna do an article of like the bloodiest fights of 2022, and I assembled a whole bunch of stuff, and then I got to the Gregory Rodriguez photos. I was like, I don't want to do this. This is actually gross.
I wrote one a couple of years ago, worst injuries in MMA, and I had to do it in about 3 sittings because it was like, oh god, like you're just seeing like Matt Mitrione's eye grow a new eye, then that grew a new eye, and it's just like, no, thank you.
Oh, I remember your article because I remember not clicking on it because I thought I don't want to look at
it. Yeah, it was both. I felt like it was both a good article, but one that definitely wouldn't get views. Like no one wants to see someone's leg on backwards and all this shit. Like,
no, get out of here.
Was it Big Nog or was it? Yeah, Big Nog against Frank Mir.
Yeah,
when he sort of stacked him and the arm snaps.
The commercial.
Herb Dean comes into. No. But
it's disgusting that Nog looked over at his own arm like it was a foreign object to his body.
Yeah, like, looking over.
There it is.
Oh, that's also attached to my body, but but no. Going back to the Gregory Rodriguez, we we say, he's notorious for having a solid chin. We've seen that in his UFC career thus far, and to get put out with one shot, phenomenal stuff from Ferreira.
Yep, absolutely great. Yeah, move forward. Shogun, I mean, he looked bad. He looked so old. Yeah. I mean, I'm a major Shogun fan. The reason that I'm into this sport is because of Shogun. But he's also been out of his prime for 8 years now. Like, he's been taking bad fights for a long time. Really should have retired after the Nogueira win last year, I think it was. But yeah, like they gave him like we were talking about last week, they gave him an easy fight. They gave him another very winnable fight in Brazil, and the dude's old as hell. The dude is old, and you know what? And like other fighters of that we were just talking about with Gregory Rodriguez, is that he also relied a lot on his chin when he was young, and his style has evolved a little bit, but a lot of that is just I mean, you see it here. This is the result of it. Anyway, he should have retired 8 years ago or the Nog fight, but this is bad.
Yeah, for me, I think he should have retired after the I don't know. I'm just looking down his record now. There are some crazy names on here that you don't even realize that he's fought because they weren't in the UFC or they weren't, you just remember sort of Shogun of more recent times. But that 2005 run of Quinton Rampage Jackson, Nogueira, Alistair Overeem, Ricardo Arona. Then he fought Mark Coleman, lost due to a broken arm, and was back 7 months later to start winning again. You know, he's got another winner. He got a win over Alistair Overeem, Kevin Randall, and Mark Coleman. He revenged that in the UFC. Chuck Liddell loses to Machida, wins the belt off Machida. Goes up against a John Jones, who John Jones, that was then his. It was a changing of the guard, but then Forrest Griffin, Brandon Vera. He fought. I don't even recall him fighting Alexander Gustafsson, but he fought Gustafsson when Gustafsson was on the way up.
Hall of Fame Dan Henderson fight. Like there's
Dan Henderson fight. Yes, he lost it, but who in that's one that we often talk about. Yeah, you lose it and your stock goes up. Then he had the Vincent Prue loss when someone threw a skateboard in the octagon and he slipped. But this guy, as recently as 2018, he's beaten people like Tyson Pedro, who himself is looking to go, I think 4-0 since his return. But I don't think the UFC have done him too many favors, as you alluded to. Putting him in with Anthony Smith in 2018 when Smith is very much on the way up. Putting him in with Paul Craig, who's very much on the way up. Putting him in with Paul Craig again after that, after they drew the first fight. Then putting him in with OSP, who's fluctuating between heavyweight and light heavyweight. And this one, like we say, Peteria. I think this may be his one win in the UFC. He, as bad as Shogun looked, and the guy's 41 years old and he's had 5,000 fights. And 4,000 of those have been absolute wars. As bad as Shogun maybe looks on the night, I don't think we're looking at a future champion in Pretoria.
But Shogun was like getting knee surgery in like 2006. Like he's not in good, he hasn't been in good shape for a lot of his career. But the Pretoria, I'm not seeing his skills. I don't think we're seeing a future contender here.
Exactly, and I think for what it's worth, I think we need to look back on Shogun's career rather than look at
more
Shogun of recent times. Like you say, I agree that he should have maybe retired after the Nogueira victory. When was that? July 2020. So and that was a UFC fight night on Fight Island. Either that, or even as far back as 2017. He's riding a 3-fight winning run. Thank God he didn't get he was booked to fight Volkan Ozdemir as recently as 2018.
That's not a great fight for him.
This is
anyone good. There's very few people you could name where I thought, Shogun could win that fight, but this was one of them. This was one of them.
Exactly. I mean, I don't know what he must have done to anyone at the UFC, but he was booked to fight Volkan Ozdemir after Volkan Ozdemir fought for the belt and lost to Daniel Cormier.
Don't ask me. I don't know.
You know what I mean? Come on, guys. But like we said, not quite the fairy tale ending for Shogun that we hoped for. But again, I don't think we can look on the Shogun of 2018 onwards. I think we need to look at the 2005 Shogun, the wars with Dan Henderson, the wins over people like he holds a win over Corey Anderson that very nearly became the Bellator champion.
We're going to talk about that in a bit as well. Sure. But Shogun's a legend. Like, to retire when your name is already in the Hall of Fame, it's a big deal. That's a big deal. Who else has done that sort of thing? Like, everyone retires, gets in the Hall of Fame, and then comes back.
Jose Aldo, great example. Jose Aldo obviously got inducted this weekend. Who retired back end of last August. So completely agree with your point. Who does that? Who retires when them as a fighter is already in the Hall of Fame?
Insane.
Very few people.
Very big
people.
career. Like his career is one of those like we can do a whole show on and just like this.
For
This
sure.
has been insane. This guy. I don't know how he did this, but yeah, he's.
Yeah.
But yeah, Aldo. When they ran that reel of Jose Aldo, I was like, man, this guy. This is insane. Holy crap, he's good.
You forget. I think you forget. A lot of people will have come to the sport to follow Conor McGregor.
Yeah.
And they'll know Jose Aldo for the 14-second knockout. They forget that he then rebounded from that knockout with a 5-round dominant victory over Frankie Edgar, who was a killer at the time, at UFC 200 in a interim title fight. You forget that he then, Jose Aldo is one of the best. We can speak about him like we speak about Shogun. Remember him for what he was in his prime, rather than what he maybe wasn't towards the back end of his career.
Yeah.
But even in the back end of his career, he lost to Merab. Yeah, so is the last, I think, 6 people that Merab's faced.
Yeah. In 15 years, the worst Aldo was top 5.
Yeah, exactly.
This is insane.
Exactly. When you talk about perennial contenders, there's a picture of Jose Aldo in the dictionary. Because, like you say, at no point was he ever, Jose Aldo, top 50. Conor McGregor is a prime example. He was top of the division. He then went up to lightweight, top of the division, champion forever. Stays in the lightweight rankings in and around the top 5. And now I think he's probably still ranked, but at best he's top between 10 and 15. Jose Aldo at worst was ranked number 5.
Yeah,
entering the bantamweight division, a division where he's too big for featherweight. He's too he's going to go up to lightweight. He then enters the bantamweight division.
Yep,
competes for the belt. Yeah, he loses to Petr Yan. Yes, he lost to Marlon Moraes, but he didn't actually lose that fight. It's
what a career.
What a career, and Hall of Fame worthy.
Absolutely. Aldo's born and bred Zuffa guy. Like, there's just so many great things to say about him. But yeah, if you only know him for the 14-second knockout, you're definitely not watching the show.
Exactly. And what I did enjoy as well is that he said that, him and McGregor, does he hate McGregor? No, I don't hate McGregor. He gave me the biggest payday of my life. I was like, that's nice to see. He's at peace with that. He's at peace with knowing that 14-second knockout is a 1 in a million. These guys could fight 100 times and McGregor lands that shot once, in my opinion, within the time frame, within the 14 seconds.
God, that was a fun era, wasn't it? That was so much fun back then. 2015, 2016.
World tours, going to Brazil, stealing belts off tables, going to Dublin, just Aldo not being able to get a word in edgeways, going on talk shows in the U. I mean,
that was great.
When's the next time, if ever, we'll see a rivalry like that? I'm not so sure we will, but
and you get one guy who's such a good trash talker, and maybe it's one of those guys where he's such a good trash talker. He's so smooth on the microphone. He's so funny. He's clever. Aldo doesn't really get that there's a bit going on. He seems actually quite pissed off. This is all happening to him. It was a great time back then.
I think he appreciated the fact that there was hype around the fight, but I agree. He got it, but he didn't. He got the building of the fight, but he didn't get the stealing of the belt. He's much more sort of traditional martial artist in that way, I believe. And we could go on a whole show about we could do a whole show. We could do an hour-long breakdown on the 15 seconds or 14 seconds or whatever
absolutely.
it was. But
what a moment.
It's disappointing. I wrote an article ages ago. MMA what if Jose Aldo beat Conor McGregor? It's a question that we need to be asking, and it would change the landscape of the sport. Would we have double champions these days? Who knows? Because McGregor went straight up to lightweight. He wouldn't have been a double champion. He may still have gone up to lightweight, but he wouldn't have been a double champion. So, I'll tweet it out on the socials and stuff. It's a fun one to read because that 14 seconds has a monumental impact on the sport, not just for Conor McGregor becoming and cementing himself as the superstar, but for the likes of Amanda Nunes, Daniel Cormier, Henry Cejudo. These guys might not have got the double champ opportunity if it wasn't for McGregor sort of doing it first.
Well,
But
and
yeah,
even
going
stuff like Reebok, ESPN, all of this was the turning point from that McGregor era where he became a megastar. How would the sport be different? And genuinely, I don't know if things just like kept trucking on and eventually we get on ESPN. But you can point to that was even before, that was like a year before the Endeavor buyout too. Like
yeah,
there's just so
exactly.
many
Yeah,
things where like that's where the value skyrocketed of this sport. We're talking about this as a sport now, whereas as late as 2015, this was I mean, it was definitely a sport, but it
it's
wasn't
it's
looked
a
at as a sport.
it
Maybe
was a
kind of like
blood sport, wasn't it? It was cage
yeah,
fighting rather
it's,
than mixed martial arts.
now
You
we're
know, if
talking
you,
about the Olympics and all this other stuff
exactly,
going on.
exactly,
Like,
and we're talking about, you know, completely different. There's so many more. I feel like there's the more issues have come out from the sport that we're going to talk about later on in even on this card for me, and then we've gone into the as a result of, let's be honest, Conor McGregor needed that dance partner in Jose Aldo,
yeah,
and rightfully so. Jose Aldo is obviously inducted into the Hall of Fame because without
yes,
Jose Aldo, if you had, let's for argument's sake, let's say it was Chad Mendes, who Conor McGregor did fight. Yes, they went back and forth, but Chad Mendes, he wasn't regarded as one of the best ever,
ever. Yeah, he was great. He was a very good fighter, but not
without a
best ever.
doubt. And at the time, Jose was the best featherweight that we've ever seen.
He was the only champion of that
Undefeated
division.
in 10 years, like you say, only champion in, from sort of carried the belt from WEC over. He's got a
Mhm.
highlight reel for days. We've seen the Chad Mendes turning knee knockout. We've seen the Cub Swanson couple of second flying knee. We've seen
Yeah,
Uriah Faber's leg. All of
yeah,
these. He's beaten a who's who.
yeah,
It wouldn't have worked if you had a guy coming in on a 2-fight winning run who just lost a decision or just been knocked out.
yeah,
Aldo made that fight for me just as much as McGregor did,
yeah.
but he made that fight way before the fight itself. And
Oh yeah,
like we say, it's completely deserving of a Hall of Fame. And
yes.
I can see, there's a couple of people, maybe another guy that retired on this card that will see himself in the Hall of Fame.
I would think so. Yeah,
Maybe not this
probably.
year, but certainly in the future.
The problem with the Hall of Fame is Matt Serra can make it in. Anyone can make
It's
it into the Hall of
it's not who
Fame.
you know. It's who you know.
It's who you know.
It's Dana White's
Friends.
friends.
Frank
What's it?
Shamrock's not in there. You know?
Yeah, Anderson Silva's still not in there.
Is he not? Oh my
No.
god. The whole Hall of Fame's a bag of garbage if he's not in there, in all honesty. Okay, let's move on to Johnny Walker getting a goofy knockout. I don't know. Well,
Yeah,
of course it was goofy looking.
yeah, it wasn't. It wasn't a clean knockout. I don't think Johnny Walker's ever going to get a clean knockout. I'm a little bit disappointed in Paul Craig. I just think that he is better. I picked. We do our MMA Sucka picks each week. I picked Paul Craig because I just think he's a better. He's a better fighter than Johnny Walker. But I think what we don't appreciate is Johnny Walker's got scary power. Like he's got weird power that clearly seems to just shock people, including Paul Craig, who, as we've seen, can take a hell of a shot.
Yeah.
But Johnny Walker is talking about making a run for the belt and whatnot now. Never going to happen, in my opinion. I will always tune in for a Johnny Walker fight because it's batshit crazy, but I just don't think that he's gonna. I think a win over a Paul Craig, if you look at the division, a win over someone like Paul Craig is Johnny Walker's ceiling. We'll go on to talk. Obviously,
ceiling.
I honestly do. We'll go on to talk a little bit more in depth about the sort of rankings of light heavyweight. But if you look, Johnny Walker's ranked 12. Obviously, he'll probably take Paul Craig's ninth ranking, but he's already lost to Nikita Krylov. Jamahal Hill was ranked number 7. Obviously, now the champion. I think Anthony Smith beats him. I think Rakic beats him. I think Blachowicz beats him. Ankalaev toys with him. Glover's no longer in the division, and then Jiri. I mean, it's difficult. I think maybe an Anthony Smith just because it's a new fight, but I just don't think he beats Anthony Smith.
No, I don't. I would struggle to pick really who he can beat. His skills. He is getting by with having some power, having some athleticism. But in terms of the actual technical things that we're talking about setting up shots sometimes, or just being in a stance, or having a stance, even
That's
this
the
guy
thing.
doesn't have a ton of discernible like the standard I
Skills.
always talk about. You don't show this guy's ability if you're teaching someone how to do this sport. It
No,
just
without a
doesn't
doubt,
seem,
no.
no.
He looks like he's had a couple of beers on a Saturday night and he's fighting outside a pub, and somehow manages to get crazy knockouts over, respect to guys like Paul Craig. And I think for Craig, it's disappointing because I think the UFC was maybe hoping that Craig goes in there, doesn't take any damage, finishes Johnny Walker early, and then they could put him on the UFC London card. We'll go on to talk about the UFC London card later on because we were talking about it a little bit off air. We'll shelve that for now, but we've got UFC 2. We're 25 minutes in, we haven't even hit the main 4 fights on the card. But there's been so much, there's a lot of talking points about this card. Andrade Murphy, I hated this fight, to be honest. I hated it going in.
She's not good. She's
not good. But I complained a lot about slap fighting last week or the week before, and I can't complain about slap fighting and then not complain about this. Murphy's corner was shit. The referee was shit, and it should have been stopped after the second round. Murphy hasn't. I'm not sure the last time she legitimately knocked someone out. She knocked out, or she finished Shakirova on short notice in 2020. Before then, she finished Maria Barella in 2019. She's not known for a knockout power. She was never going to, after the first round, she was never going to win that fight. And yeah, she was in there for 10 more minutes, and it's, the corner know Lauren Murphy better than anyone. No, they don't. The corner in that fight, the corner didn't have Lauren Murphy's best interest in mind.
Yeah.
To receive 231 significant strikes, of which 69% were landed to the head.
231. This is Joanna Jędrzejczyk kind of numbers.
This is in a 15-minute fight.
Yeah,
this is not a 25-minute fight. And I'm not sure if you saw Aaron Bronster's tweet. Try and pull it up now.
See, Jéssica Andrade says her hands hurt and she stopped punching her.
I mean, yeah, rightfully so. It's just like punching a wall for, let me just quickly find his tweet because it is a shocking statistic about how many shots Murphy received. Right. Yeah. Laura Murphy officially absorbed 161 significant strikes to the head in her loss. By comparison, in Wiley Yana 1, one of the most brutal women's fights of all time, across 5 rounds, they absorbed a combined 192 strikes to the head.
Oh man,
combined.
This is terrible.
What are the corner doing? Step in and take your fighter out of the. Lauren Murphy's tough as fuck. Like, let's not.
That's it. But that's what we can affirmatively say.
But will she ever be the same again? That's a Calvin Kattar style beating against Max Holloway.
She took her worst. The third round was her worst round. Like, you may have saved her from.
We didn't need to see the third round. She wasn't taking Andrade down, and if she did, she wasn't keeping her there. She wasn't hurting Andrade. Andrade had no respect for her power. The first round, she slammed that leg kick and pretty much took Murphy's whole game away from her. I didn't need to see a third round of Lauren Murphy getting the shit beaten out of her because it didn't. What did it teach me? Oh, Lauren Murphy's tough. We knew that coming into it. We knew that after the first round. We knew that after the second round. Take your fighter out and allow her to fight. She's not going to be in a championship position again, ever, because she can't get past someone like Jéssica Andrade. Andrade beats her 10 days out of 10. And that's why everyone on the MMA Sucka picked Andrade.
Yes. Good.
How does that now affect Lauren Murphy going forward? I don't need to see Lauren Murphy get the shit kicked out of her for an extra 5 minutes.
You're in the wrong sport, man. You got
But no, I thought the referee could have stepped in 10 times. I think the corner should have pulled her out after the second round.
Yeah.
And I'm comparing that to, I watched Chris Eubank Jr. versus Liam Smith. Eubank Jr. got knocked down. He clearly wasn't with it. He then sort of got knocked down again. Referee stepped in and stopped it, but Roy Jones, who's obviously in the corner of Chris Eubank Jr., was there with the towel in his hand, ready to throw it in already. So the referee and the corner could see that their fighter was in danger, wasn't going to win that fight, and was on the end of a potentially brutal knockout.
Yep.
After the second round, Lauren Murphy was, 2 10-8s down. Yeah. Jéssica Andrade has some of the worst, or I say worst, some of the best power, worst for her opponent.
Yep.
At the weight. Why are you risking your fighter going out and getting separated from consciousness? Just pull her out. She doesn't need to be in there anymore. But
have some care for your fighters. Like
exactly.
These people,
and
anyway.
Andrade called for another fight with Wiley, but that fight was at 125. I think Andrade is stuck in between weight classes at the moment. But I'd watch Andrade Wiley. Why not?
Sure, whatever. Yeah, there's not that many people in both of the weight classes. There's not a ton of stuff going on right now. Exactly. And Jéssica Andrade has only ever lost to the champions of those divisions. But yeah, we'll move forward. Gilbert Burns, I don't think we learned anything from this fight. This is what we expected, and he got it done.
Yeah, he's got a wonderful takedown and brilliant jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, he's world
Neil
champion.
Magny struggles on the floor.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I knew that.
Yeah, we'll move forward then. Brandon Moreno wins the quadrilogy, and what a show it was. Like I think after the 4 fights, a few of them were very close, but I think overall the best moments over all of the fights have been Brandon Moreno. Wins clearly here, wins significantly here. He finishes, or not quite finishes his opponent, but gets a TKO victory because he closed the eye of Deiveson Figueiredo and looked dominant. I don't think Deiveson Figueiredo had many moments in this fight. He had a few sub attempts which weren't that serious. But we're talking about him having sub attempts off takedowns. On the feet, he didn't have any moments at all. Brandon Moreno's game planning, his positioning, his footwork, his distance control. This was a really great masterclass to end a quadrilogy on. Clearly, one of these guys is better than the other.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Moreno was just faster, he was just slicker, and he was just better. And like you say, I think I know obviously Moreno finished him in the second fight. I think this was the most decisive of the 12 that they fought, or however many, the four fights that they've had. It's almost unfortunate that it was a doctor's stoppage because people are going to ask the questions again. But luckily, Figgy didn't come out and say, "Oh no, I was good to go." The eye was closed, and it closed almost instantly. That wasn't an awful after he got hit with that sort of cuffing. I think it was a cuffing left, wasn't it? And then the sort of push away with the right.
Yeah.
The eye, it wasn't. It was a minute and a half, 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes. That eye was closed at sort of after the third round, and I think it's come out since. It's actually Figgy's eye is okay. It's his nose that's causing the problem. But
oh god,
yeah, I just think I completely agree. I think just at 125 pounds, Brandon Moreno is just better. There's so many more factors that we could talk about as far as how good did Brandon Moreno look with Saif Saud? Really good, and that was something we were talking about last week on the show. Is how would he look with a new coach after the whole James Krause stuff? I forgot last week, and I should have mentioned it, that Figgy had kind of dropped Henry Cejudo as a coach for this fight. He just trained in Brazil. Now he was taken down a lot in this fight and Brandon Moreno didn't. He landed 3 takedowns of 6, but he almost 7 minutes of control time across 15 minutes. Did Figgy make a little bit of a mistake by not having Henry Cejudo there as a John Jones is now in that gym. Wiley Zhang's in the gym. Figgy could have been in the gym with Henry Cejudo. I think that maybe is a little bit of a mistake, and I agree with you. The two sub attempts, the guillotine in the first round he was just holding on to position, looking to get stood back up, and I think the knee bar sort of heel hook thing I think that was the end of the second. I think he knew that he hadn't got it, which is why he threw the illegal shot, the illegal sort of heel.
Yeah.
But Brandon Moreno looked deadly shocked with that one. It's like, what the fuck is he doing? But it is what it is. And I'd love to get your thoughts on Figgy at 135. I personally don't see him doing too well.
No, No,
I
he's
think
he's a
it's
little bit
tough.
undersized for 125, going up to 135 like he wants. I know he's struggling with the weight cut. The problem is that 135 is just so good. It's such a
Exactly.
stacked division. Who does he beat in the top 10 is maybe nobody. He might be competitive outside the top 15 and make a fair career doing stuff out there, but he's so undersized for 135 in this division. Maybe he fights Dominic Cruz, like maybe that's an okay fight. But yeah, he doesn't do well in that weight class, right?
No, exactly. Like, standing with him, squaring off with Moreno and standing across from Moreno, he didn't look like the considerably bigger guy. When we looked at Izzy and Alex Pereira looked like a reasonable sized heavyweight when them two stood across from each other. And he's not even a light heavyweight; he's technically a middleweight.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the thought of Alex Pereira going up to light heavyweight, it's like, well, yeah, look at the fucking size of the geezer. He is a unit. You
Yes.
look at Davison, and he's not a massive guy. I don't know what it is, because he's he like we say, he does struggle to get down to the weight, and I think he always has. He missed weight against Joey Benavidez the first time that those guys fought, so the bout was vacated. But he doesn't strike me as the kind of person that's got a frame where he can put on a load of size. I just think, looking, Umar Nurmagomedov is ranked to number 11.
Yeah.
That's a tough fight for Davison. You look at the sort of, assuming that he may be, you go from being a champion in the lower weight class to coming up into the high weight. In theory, you should be getting a top 5 fight. Sean O'Malley is too big for him.
Come on. Like,
Petr
he's not
Yan,
beating
too
him.
big for him. Merab Dvalishvili, too big for him. Marlon Vera and Corey Sandhagen are obviously matched together, too big for him.
Yeah.
Rob Font, I think, is too long for him. He's, again, probably, I agree with you. Dominic Cruz, a Frankie Edgar probably would have been a prime fight, and yet Frankie's now no longer obviously in the sport.
Rest in peace.
Exactly. I do believe that Chris Gutierrez did send him to the shadow realm, but Pedro Munoz maybe, but Pedro Munoz is now matched with Chris Gutierrez. Figgy will spend a lot of time out, I think, trying to put on size and whatnot. He'll look, I think physically, he'll look a lot better at bantamweight. Performance-wise, I'm not convinced that he'll do any better. He's 35 as well. To try and start a career revival at 35, taking into account we just talked about Jose Aldo was a 35er and Figgy's a 35er. It's chalk and cheese, these guys. I think Figgy's had his best data behind him, and it's a difficult one because he's been since December of 2020. He's been focused on Brandon Moreno, and maybe he's just got a style that he struggles with against Brandon Moreno. But again, I just don't think physically he's the size to go up to 135 and be a competitor up there.
No, major cosign with you on that one. Yeah, I don't have anything to add. He's not good. 135 is too good. This is such a good division. I can't imagine him there. Brandon Moreno getting pelted on the way out of the arena. I do want to throw something out because people were like, man, these fans. This is the cost of being a real sport. Like we're not in gymnasiums, we're not in casinos anymore. This is when nationalism is on the line. The fans are going to weigh in like this stuff matters. And this is how people treat the sport when a sport matters. Even in the biggest sports in the world. Like we did a Celtic game just last week. So it's a Scottish team versus another Scottish team. They still separate the fans because this is a real sport. And this thing is, as the UFC gets bigger, the stakes are higher than they ever have been before. We have nationalism on the line. This is just the cost of being a real sport. You're going to get one guy pelted with garbage every once in a while.
Exactly. I don't agree with it, but I think the Brazilian fans have to have some respect for Brandon Moreno, who didn't, get a dodgy split decision. He didn't, win due to, an eye poke, or he didn't, Davison Figueiredo didn't get disqualified. He won fair and square. It was a cuffing shot to the eyes, cut the underneath of Figueiredo's eyes, caused the eye to swell, and you can't see out of it. It was a fair legal shot. Brandon Moreno, I know that the scores have come out that he lost the second round. I had him 3-0 up, and losing.
Yeah. He was winning this fight. I don't know where that came from.
I don't agree with the throwing of the the shit at Brandon Moreno, but
I wouldn't do it, but I
no,
get it.
exactly. But
If this was
yeah,
in Mexico, you got to think like if this was Mexico, Brazil, playing in FIFA, well,
yeah,
someone would have thrown
exactly. Yeah,
garbage
yeah. I
on the
mean,
pitch. It just happens.
it's they're chanting "Who am I?" like you're going to die.
Yeah.
And then people throw beer at him, and he's kind of surprised. I don't think Brandon Moreno was too bothered about it. He was.
No,
We've seen the video of him kind of running to the back, and he's pissing
he
himself
gets it.
laughing. Like
He's
exactly,
watched he knows he's watched real sports before. This happens anyway.
exactly.
Sorry, go
The
ahead.
same thing happened to Colby Covington when he fought in Brazil. Said, "This place is done," but he got absolutely trashed on. And
Yeah,
it was disappointing for. We'll go forward now to talk about the main event, but for Glover's retirement to have almost be in an empty arena, that was
yeah,
disappointing. But these Brazilian fans, they haven't had a show there since the beginning of before lockdown. It didn't all go their way. They had guys that lost on the card and lost convincingly. Shogun,
yeah.
Davidson Figueiredo.
Yeah.
Maybe they were just like you say, it's national pride, and maybe they were just simply put just pissed off.
Yeah, fair is fair. I understand. Anyway, let's go to Glover Teixeira, Jamahal Hill. I think we'll do a little bit of the good before we get to a lot of the bad on this fight. I mean, good for Jamahal Hill for winning this one. He looked quick. He defended takedown seamlessly. He's got some quick hands. He's got some good power. And he retired a very old Glover Teixeira who's looked very old. Yeah, and he's got 6 kids, and he won the belt. Is he the best in the world? Is he even the best in the UFC? Go ahead. What do you think? What do you make of this one?
I want to have a little. I want to take a dig at Luke Thomas. I listened to his analysis. I know he's your friend now because you share a follow on Twitter, but
That's right.
yeah, I know your allegiances lie with him. However, he made the valid point, and of course, I'm joking. He's one of the best analysts in the game, but he made the point that Jamahal Hill's takedown defense is poor for the upper echelons of the light heavyweight division. He gets taken down an average, I think, of 3 times per fight. And then for some reason, he turned into sort of prime Khabib in this one, defended 15 of 17 takedowns. It was only taken down twice, of which Glover didn't really do much. And I've seen a lot of people say, but Glover was going for the same takedown every time. Yes, he was, but that doesn't mean it's any easier to defend. Yes, you may be a little bit more expecting, but Glover Teixeira is Glover Teixeira. He took Yuri Prochazka down. He took Jan Blachowicz down. He's taken pretty much everyone down that he's fought. But he wasn't going for the same takedown. Yes, he was going for the single leg, but then he was coming up into the body lock. Or, he was getting the body lock and looking to dip down to the single leg. It was, dip down to the double leg, lock his hands and take the fight to the floor, which is how he obviously got one of the takedowns. I think that was in the 3rd or the 4th round. That was in the 2nd round where he got the takedown. Jamahal Hill's got crazy power. Glover Teixeira's got a crazy chin,
Yeah.
And a big factor for me going into the fight was how much is that Yuri Prochazka fight going to have taken out of Glover? Because he was battered and bruised and bloody in that fight, and then he was submitted. I don't think it took anything out of him. In fact, I think it gave him more. Because, I think it was just between the 4th and 5th rounds, Doctor comes in, looks at Glover, or maybe between the 3rd and the 4th round, comes in, looks at Glover and says, look, he's like, yeah, let's go, I'm ready to go. This is a guy that doesn't need to fight financially anymore. This is a guy that is he's 43, I think, 44 maybe. He's an older gentleman, let's just say the least. And he's going out there he's 43. So he's going out there for the love of fighting. The guy just loves a war, and it's a passing of the torch for sure at 205, but I completely agree with you. It's hard to argue that Hill is the best 205er out there. I think there's at least 2 people in the UFC that beat him in Jiri and Ankalaev, and I think Nemkov probably beats him. And that's outside of the UFC completely. There was an argument between sort of Nemkov and Glover. I don't think there's an argument between Nemkov and Hill, but it's tough to see how Hill beats Ankalaev. I think Ankalaev's got better wrestling than Glover. I think he does a lot better against Yuri Prochazka because Yuri isn't going to look for a takedown. per se. I think he'll look to keep it on the feet and do that crazy, land something crazy. We all know what Jury's like as far as landing shots that shouldn't be thrown and shouldn't be landed. But
Yeah.
I know there's also been talk of Alex Pereira moving up in weight, and I think that's a good fight for Alex Pereira. Hill is there to be hit, and who better to train you for a fight? Yes, he was dominated Glover Teixeira, but who better to train you for a fight than a guy that's been in there for 25 minutes with Jamahal Hill?
Yeah.
I don't want to come across that I'm being disrespectful to Hill, because he
No,
is
like
the fair light heavyweight champion. It's just personally, it's a difficult sell that he is the best in the world at 205. It's difficult.
Well, yeah, I didn't want to open with it of just like Jamal Hill. Like I said, he had quick hands, but that's about all that really impressed me in this fight. And I know he had fine takedown defense, but Glover's takedowns are slow as hell. They were not looking great. He brings his feet in kind of wrong. He's switching in and out of his stances. His spatial awareness, his cage control are not things to write home about. Pretty much, I would pick him to lose against Jan Blachowicz and Ankalaev. Definitely a Pereira. There's very few fights I'd pick him to win. And Nemkov would beat him, no problem. Like, I'm just not overly impressed with him. And I know I even said that before the fight. Now he won and all that stuff. But having seen him over 5 rounds, it doesn't make his stock rose because of the belt. In terms of his skills, his stock, I don't think his stock rose in my eyes, personally.
I don't think we learned anything new about Jamahal Hill in this one, apart from the fact that maybe his takedown defense has improved slightly. But
yeah,
you'd expect that from a younger guy who is still, this was his 13th professional fight. He's 31 years old, so he's not the youngest guy. But I don't know what we learned from, with no disrespect to Glover, he's been knocked out plenty of times before. He's been finished plenty of times before.
Yeah, Anthony Johnson and a few guys like this. Yeah,
Anthony Johnson, Alexander Gustafsson in Sweden.
Yeah.
If you're Jamahal Hill, you should have been getting Glover out. Why he abandoned the head kicks? The head kick worked, and then he went back to it, and then he went back to it. I think he wobbled Glover 2 or 3 times with the head kick from the southpaw stance. Go back to it. It's working. If you're a wrestler and you're dominating on the floor, but you're getting dominated on the feet, you go in and you take your opponent down. Go back to, I don't know, maybe he was scared about throwing the high kick and Glover rushing in, but like you said, Glover's takedowns are slow. You can throw the high kick, and by the time that Glover rushes in, I imagine that you can at least dig one underhook and reverse the position. But
yeah, I think he actually had, I will say he had good body work. The head kicks were good. I remember he had some inside knees that were good and a few body kicks that were actually quite like. There were moments where I thought, okay, that's pretty good. But yeah, mostly
be interesting to see what they do with him next.
He's the top 5 in that division. That's all. However, Alex Pereira was in the corner with Anderson Silva, and then when he fought Israel Adesanya, and now he's in the corner for Glover Teixeira. This guy's out here making notes. This guy, and he's also bigger. Like, we saw them shake hands. Alex Pereira already has the size advantage,
which is, when on paper, crazy. He fights in division 20 pounds below. He's a champion of a division 20 pounds below, and yet he is bigger than the current champion.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think that's the next fight, just because I want to see it.
Scares the shit out of me,
So cool. Anyway, so let's move on to UFC London, something which I think, we're trying to get tickets to. We're trying to get media passes to at this point. It's not looking good, but let's try it. Leon Edwards, Kamaru Usman seems to be the confirmed main event. This will be the 3rd fight in their series. I would have waited anyway. Justin Gaethje versus Rafael Fiziev. Great fight. Great match. The rest of the card, Frazer, what do you think? What do you make of this?
It's a fight night card with a championship fight, and Justin Gaethje Fiziev is at this point probably a fight night headliner, and that's no disrespect to those guys, because I want to see them fight across 5 rounds, not 3. Come on, this is a pay-per-view that American and other viewers are going to have to get up in the middle of the night to watch, like we do.
Yeah.
It's a pay-per-view where rumored that the tickets are going to be up to 3 or 4 times the amount of a normal ticket to go and to be in attendance at. And the card is so poor.
Well,
You
I'm
know,
saying the
and
tickets are $300. That's just the Gunnar Nelson effect, man. That's what happens when you
exactly.
put Gunnar Nelson on the card.
And this is, I don't want this to come across as I'm disrespecting any of the fighters on there.
Yeah,
They get told, do you want to fight in London on UFC 286? Absolutely, 100%. Of
yeah,
course, I want to fight on a lot of
yeah.
these guys' first pay per view. But you've got Sam Patterson making his UFC debut, which is fine, but it's not a late notice against a guy who's also making his UFC debut. You've got Chris Duncan making his UFC debut. You've got Jake Hadley, a guy that's 1-1 in the UFC. You've got Joanne Wood, she's a legend of the sport, but she's what? She's 2-5 in her last
Yeah,
7
I know.
fights, having lost 3 times on the spin.
Yeah,
You've got Luana Carolina, who just got knocked out cold in the exact same arena by Molly McCann.
yeah.
You've got Veronica Macedo, who I think could be a real talent, but she's fighting Juliana Lima. So Veronica Macedo is coming off, I think, 2 losses on the bounce. Oh no, a single loss to Bay Malecki in March 2020. She's fighting Juliana Miller, who is, she's a tough winner, but she's making a UFC debut.
3-1 overall. This is.
I mean, and this is, there are quality fights. Jack Shaw's making his featherweight debut against Makwan Amirkhani. I think that's a great fight.
Great fight.
One of the best fights on the entire card for me, Lerone Murphy versus Nathaniel Wood. Jai Herbert's fighting on the card as well against Ludwig Klein. The return of Casey O'Neill, which I'm really excited about. Casey O'Neill returning. I really like Casey O'Neill. I think she's a future champion.
Yeah,
but she's coming back off an injury, so we can't expect her to maybe be going at full throttle. And then, like you say, Gunnar Nelson versus Daniel Rodriguez.
It's not a good fight for Gunnar. That's not a great fight
for Gunnar, but Gunnar's 2-3 in his last 5 fights.
And that's over
2017.
Since 2017, yeah.
And then D-Rod also coming off a loss to Neil Magny. And then Marvin Vettori coming off a loss to Robert Whittaker. He's 1-2 in his last 3 fights against Israel Adesanya and Robert Whittaker, against Roman Dolodzi, who is is enjoying a big winning run.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a pay-per-view. I don't want to. I would not. You've got to think, hypothetically, would I pay to watch just that fight? No, I wouldn't pay to watch just that fight. Let's say the absolute worst happens and Leon Edwards or Kamaru Usman falls out and the fight's scrapped. You've then got a 3-round main event between Justin Gaethje and Fiziev, which is a good fight. It's a solid fight.
Banger.
It's not pay-per-view worthy.
Yeah, I know.
We need another title fight or a 5-round.
But weren't you saying? I think the event just after this had like 3 title fights on it, didn't it? Like UFC 280
before it.
UFC 285
was rumored to have 3. I think it's only got 2 now. So it's Jones and Garn. It was rumored to have Nunes and Aldana and Shevchenko versus Grasso. But if you just look at that 285 card, outside of the sort of the main fights, as it were, you've got the debut of Bo Nickel, which is extremely interesting. You've got Jeff Neal versus Shavkat Rakhmonov. You've got Cody Garbrandt on the card. You've got Derek Brunson versus Dricus Duplessis. You've got Amanda Hebas, who's a huge star.
Yeah, she is. She's great.
Why are the and then the fight night after it is Petr Yan versus Merab. Why is Petr Yan or Merab not on UFC London?
Bless you.
Managed to mute the mic just in time, I think. But you got, even as much as I don't want to say it.
Bless you.
Right, we're good. We're back on. We're back firing at full cylinders now. Holly Holm versus Yana Kunitskaya. Why is that? Holly Holm is a big name.
Yeah.
As much as she shouldn't be anywhere near the title anymore, she's a big name. Put her on the UFC London card.
Yeah.
For me, this is crying out for a Khamzat Chimaev on the card, and I think that's what might happen. Khamzat Chimaev at middleweight against somebody.
Yeah, I can see. Yeah, they just need something a little bit more on this one. Holly Holm is always a good one. She's a road dog. She's certainly not in her prime. Why did they use the picture of John Jones on Wikipedia of him in court? Like, there's so many good pictures. And then Cyril Gahn is him like
looking pretty.
Yeah, looking pretty like a bomber
cool.
jacket with sunglasses. Exactly. Why is John Jones in court?
You're asking people to shell out, upward of £300. That's just for the ticket. Then you've got to get to London. In and around London is expensive.
You got to risk your life on the Northern Line. It's a weird place to be.
I quite literally lost for work. But the thing is, the week after you've got the PFL in Newcastle. So if you're a diehard fan that wants to go to both, you've got to go from one end of the country to the other. The PFL tickets are going to be a hell of a lot cheaper, and that I believe is headlined by Dakota Ditchever and either Dakota Ditchever or Simeon Powell. But
yeah, I got the email about that. Actually, that was a good one. That's a really good looking PFL event.
But this is what I'm saying. If you're an MMA fan in the UK, are you going to shell out £300 for a UFC pay-per-view where 2 fights maybe are pay-per-view worthy, maybe even just one, just in Gaethje Fiziev, arguably a fight, not a headliner?
Yeah.
Or are you going to save maybe 250? PFL tickets aren't going to be expensive. They're going to be £50 to £100, depending on how close you want to get to the cage. In Newcastle, where you're going to get to see some of the biggest upcoming talent in the UK, in a much more intimate arena in Newcastle, where it's going to be, everything's going to be cheaper, accommodation, getting there when you're out and about in Newcastle. I think, unfortunately, people are going to pick the UFC because of the 3 letters.
But
the PFL is, in my opinion, the better option going forward. The only thing about the PFL is I'm so disappointed. This is something else I just wanted to quickly touch on. With not Dakota Ditchever, people know that I am a massive Dakota Ditchever fan. I think she is the future of the sport. She's supposed to go for the PFL. She's 2-0 in the PFL now, 2 finishes. She's 7-0 in her career, with a 4-fight amateur career, defeating girls like Levi Steedman and Shauna Bannon, who are recognizable names in the women's game. She's got a big sort of extensive Muay Thai background. She goes over to she trains at Manchester Top Team. She goes over to train at ATC. 24 years old, a finisher at women's flyweight, which is something we don't often see. I think she's got 6 finishes in 7 fights. Why is she fighting a girl that's 3-3?
Yeah, this is not.
She should be 3-3, who's 1-3 in her last 3 fights.
The PFL matchmakers went to the school of how to build like Michael Venom Page and people like this. Of like, who can we find for her to fight?
We don't want her to be a Bellator fighter. If we wanted her to get Bellator matchmaking, we'd
ask for it.
We'd ask for it. Yeah. I want to see it. She's fought better competition outside of the PFL. She fought a girl that was 5-0 on UAE Warriors. Even Hasna Gaber, who she fought in London when I went to the event, she was 4-1 at least, and she had a little something. This girl, Clara Riccianolo, I really don't understand this fight for Dakota. I understand the fight for Dakota. She's being given, I don't want to say a guaranteed win because anything can happen in MMA, but she's being given a win where she is heavily expected to win.
Yes.
Why? Why? And then you compare that to Simeon Powell, who it's the same as Dakota Ditchever, 7-0. I think he's fighting up at heavyweight in this one. And he's fighting a 5-1 Dutch kickboxer who I think he won his last fight and then he lost a fight. Well, he's got 1 loss in his record via submission, but he's got five knockouts. There's a risk there for Simeon Powell, but he's the exact same record as Dakota. So why are you putting Dakota in with almost 0 risk? And this is nothing against Dakota. She has no control, within reason. She has no control over who she fights.
Yeah,
it's just for me, it's just a little bit disappointing because I think we could have found a better opponent for Dakota Ditchever
I know.
on
I know.
so not even late notice. There's plenty of time, but it is what it is, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's the thing of just like, even if they find, could you imagine if her opponent drops out due to injury and they have to find someone who's like 2-5 for her to
That's the
fight?
worry. If you start off with the sort of upper echelons, if you start
Yeah.
off with a 5-0 girl, and then she drops out for a 3-3 girl, that
Fine.
makes sense
Yes.
because it's what we can find on late notice who is willing to travel over to the UK to fight the UK home fighter, the UK based fighter.
But
Starting off with a 3-3 girl, there's not much scope to go down after that. So, PFL just need to play it a little bit. They don't want to fall into that Bellator because people when MVP was on the come up, this is what we expected from MVP. So it's going to walk in there and walk over people. With Dakota, we want to see her troubled. We haven't seen her troubled in the PFL this far. We want to see a little bit of where she got to, go into a second round. I just want to see her in a second round. That's it. And then I want to see her in a third round. And then I
not in
want to
this
see her
fight.
against exactly. And I want to see her against a really tough wrestler who is going to take her down. I want to kind of almost see her on down on a card to see how she reacts. But we're not going to get it against a 3-3 girl that's lost 3 of her last 4 fights. It's disappointing, but fair play to Dakota. If you can get on paper an easy win in your first sort of headlining bout in your hometown, in your home country, I'd do it. This isn't a Dakota Ditcher problem; it's a PFL problem. But going forward, I do want to see her tested a little bit more, just like they're doing with Simeon Powell. But we'll see. That's not until the end of March, 25th of March, the week after UFC London. So we'll see this week. UFC London tickets go on sale this week. We'll see if they announce another big fight either before or just after. I doubt it though, but I do hope a Hamzat is on the card or someone to that ilk.
Someone real, like some real big blockbuster to bring it together. I'm surprised that they did the Edwards fight, but Edwards and Kamaru. But anyways, we got PFL challengers coming up this weekend. There's not a ton going on this weekend. PFL challengers. Do keep your eye on Eric Alican, I believe it's pronounced, versus Thad Jean. Both of those guys undefeated at welterweight. But yeah, both of those guys are going places. But yeah, it's definitely going to be a good one to watch out for. That's PFL challengers week 1. What else do we have going on?
Not an awful lot, to be honest. I think Arthur Batervia versus Anthony Yard in the world of boxing at I think it's at is it SSE or OVO, whatever they call
Whatever
it.
the next, the next
not Wembley, the next door to it kind of thing.
Yeah,
that this is, I think, the winner of it. Well, if Batervia wins, he goes and fights Bivol. If Yard wins, there's obviously going to be a rematch. But then, this is to determine who fights Bivol next for the. We're looking at undisputed light heavyweight here, not in this fight, but the winner of this fight. I think it's going to be Baterviev. I think he's just going to have too much. He's the WBC, WBO, and IBF. I think light heavyweight champion. He holds 3 of the 4 belts, and the guy that holds the other belt is Bivol, who obviously, as we know, knocked off Canelo, knocked off I can't remember the tall Mexican guy that was undefeated, but he absolutely battered him. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. So it's interesting, but it's not. If you miss it, you miss it, kind of thing.
Hey, what about I know we're running out of time here, so we'll just do a quick word on it. Apparently, Francis Ngannou has officially been sent from Misfits Boxing an offer for Derek Chisora. That's a winnable fight for Francis, isn't it? That's bad then. That's real bad.
I just don't see the point. I don't want to see him on influencer. He's not an influencer boxer. He's a legitimate world heavyweight champion in UFC. He's got savage knockout power. I don't want to see Derek Chisora is never going to be the same after that beating that he took from Tyson Fury. I don't want to see him then potentially get knocked. Exactly. I don't want to see him potentially get knocked out by Francis Ngannou. Francis Ngannou, does a win over Derek Chisora do much? I mean, it gets him in a boxing ring. It gets plenty of eyes on him, but he's not going to earn a lot of money off that fight. He'll earn more than he ever earned in the UFC, but I don't think it's like a never have to work again kind of money making fight. For Derek, I think it's also a potentially winnable fight for Derek, because if he can avoid Ngannou's big shots and clinch like Derek does, clinch him for the first 18 minutes of the fight, it makes for a long second half of the fight for Francis Ngannou. But you know, it's boxing's gonna box, and Franson's gonna do whatever the hell he wants. I just can't keep up with it, man.
No, and like this isn't a normal situation where like beat the guy ranked at 10, and then you'll work your way up. Just wait for Tyson Fury or Deontay Wilder or
Exactly,
Anthony
and
Joshua.
wait
Just
until
wait
you,
it out.
because let's it's fun to say, oh yeah, but what about it's not. Yeah, anyone ranked within the top 5 dominates Francis Ngannou.
Yes.
That's no disrespect. You can't just have knockout power.
Yeah.
We've seen, ask Conor McGregor. He's got knockout power. He's absolutely dominated by Floyd Mayweather. He won 2 or 3 rounds when Floyd couldn't be bothered at the start of it. Let's be honest. I saw I saw Tyson Fury come out and like, I'll, if Usyk doesn't accept the fight, I'll fight him. Of course you will, because it's an easy fight for you.
Yeah. Hopefully they get the Usyk fight done, because that's what we actually want to see. Tyson Fury versus Usyk.
I thought that would be done and already announced for April. I was looking towards maybe April or June, I reckon, for that one.
Is it in London?
I think it'll be in Saudi Arabia.
I'm not going to go to that one then. I was going to say maybe London. I'll go to that one.
Yeah, if it's in London, I'll try and get tickets, I think. But there's too much money out in Jeddah. Do you know what I mean? There's too much money for it. Because I know as well, Jake Paul is scheduled to fight Tommy Fury
in Saudi Arabia. Oh, they get the big fights, do they?
I mean,
I thought Francis Ngannou was in Saudi Arabia. He probably still is right now, actually.
With Ronaldo, yeah. So, there's talks going on behind the scenes that we're not savvy to, but it's progress. But we'll have to wait and see it. Like I said, I thought it would have already been announced, but I think it'll be, if at all, it'll be announced within the month for the first half of 2023, I believe.
All right. Well, let's get out of here for the week. Frazer, links will be down below. All that good stuff. Anything else we need to cover off?
I think, it's going to be a slower week. So, just keep an eye on MMA Sucka. We might have a few more opinion-based pieces and, just a little bit more sort of flexible content, less sort of previews and whatnot this week. But there will still be previews. There's plenty going on sort of on the smaller shows. And obviously we'll be there with the breaking news as well.
Great stuff. Frazer, thanks for your time. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.